Alright, so this is class number 2. Yeah, here's what we're going to cover, and so on and so forth. Alright, so first things first, advanced CSS. So one of the things you might want to do when you're working on your site there is to look at CSS up. If you click on this, it'll just bring you to, you know, the CSS tags and things like that. And if you go down, you can see here, like the fancier ones. You might want to just kind of click through them and see what they have for possibilities and things like that. Okay. There's too many tags, or sorry, CSS rules to cover. All right, so manual responsive code. Basically, if you remember responsive framework, what it does is it basically takes something that's a design and it will react to the scale of it. So if I take this and if I scale it like this, you can see then what it does is it will stack the items. And if I go like this, it will expand them out. Okay, so it just responds to the device and basically the browser window. And the idea here is that way it'll work both mobile devices as well as desktop computers, laptops, so on. It'll be kind of resolution independent in a way. So that's the way we work now, and that's great, and that's what we want to do. Now the thing is, before in the first web design course, we used Bootstrap, and that basically is a pre-built framework. It just has a bunch of CSS and JavaScript written, and then you just reference their CSS rules with their classes. You just need to know what the classes are, and then you plop in those, okay? And that's great, and quite honestly, that's probably what we should still use even after this. And there's a bunch of other ones out there too. You'll see there's some really cool ones. I know Google has one. What was that one called? It was really neat. It has some really interesting things where like you can click on a button and like it'll expand around, and you can look up and you'll find other ones too. It's just Bootstrap's the most popular one, and because of that, it makes it somewhat worth it to utilize that for a lot of different reasons. But what we're going to do here is actually make our own responsive web page, okay, using our own CSS tags. Okay, now the first thing you need to do right at the top, and this goes even if you are using Bootstrap, is you have to add this meta here. Okay, so you can see it over here. It's this meta initial scale, yada yada yada. So I'm just going to go ahead and just quickly type this up. So obviously we have the doc type HTML, right? And then we do HTML, and we close our HTML, and then after HTML we have the head, and then we close our head. Oops. Head, and we have extras. Okay, and we have body, and then we close the body. Then inside of the head we put a title, and let's just say, you know, custom CSS responsive page, just because I need something in order to put that in here. Great. And we're just going to go ahead and save this. Control-Shift-S, Command-Shift-S, depending on your thing, and see if we can find HTML. Yeah, I'll just type it in here. It's just here. So I'm just going to say responsive CSS example dot HTML. Glorious, and should automatically update. Great. And then what we need to do is we put that meta in there. So this should be tabbed in. Tabbed in. And then we'll tab in for this, and I am just, because I'm lazy, I'm just going to copy this. So I'm just going to Control-C, and boop, and we'll put this over here, and we will Control-V. Okay, so basically, if you remember, the meta is basically stuff that it gives information about your web page, about the HTML here. In general, that's what that tag for is, to add extra information that's not like already predetermined stuff. In this case, we're adding an element for the viewport. That's why I say the name viewport, and the content we're adding is about the device width and the width of the device, and we're just setting the initial scale to 0. So basically what we're doing is we're just saying whatever the size of the web page is, like that, set it to that, and we can respond to it, and reset like what a zoom value is also to 0, because now you can zoom in and out of pages things. Okay, so but that needs to be in there, otherwise basically when we write the CSS, it can't sample the web browser size without that. Okay, so what we need to do is basically build up a framework inside of this in order to That's weird. Okay, we need to build up a framework inside of this in order to make our columns and such. Okay, so we're going to do columns and rows just like before. Nothing too fancy. Basically, what we need to do is we need to make 12 column classes because we're going to do 12 columns across, right? So if you remember, most of the time, now you don't have to do 12. You could do 10. You could do 4. You could, you know what I mean? Like there's only 4 available. I mean, most of the time we only do between 3 and 4 anyhow. But 12 is nice because let's say I want to do 3 across, right? Then I would do a 4 column, a 4 column, and a 4 column. But let's say I want to do 4 across. I do a 3 column, a 3 column, and a 3 column, and a 3 column. 12 is good because you can divide it up and much easier. Or if I want to do 4 across, right? Then 2, 2, 2, 2. Or what? I'm sorry. If I want to do 8 across, do a bunch of 2s, and I mean, it's just you can break it up in a nicer way. So that's why 12 is typically the size that or the number of columns we typically choose. That's the reason for it. Okay, so we're just gonna make a column for each one of those. The width, basically we're gonna set each column width to. Now I put 8.33 here because what you do is, let's open up calculator, is that if I take the total width, so 100%, and if we divide that by 12, right? So one column each, you know, into 12 columns. Each column would be 8.33. Then all we're going to do is we're just going to add that on top of each one. So column 1 would be 8.33. A column 2 would be that times 2. So it'd be 16.66. And then then we do plus 8.33. You know, it'd be 24. So 25%. You can actually see it over here. But basically what we do is just add on that for each column. Okay, until you get all the way up to all the columns. And the last thing we need to do is we have to add a float left because what we want to do is have them like stack from left to right using a float. And what that means is that if this gets collapsed, they'll pop down underneath by using this float. Okay, so the float makes it left align, but it also makes it so that if we make this shrink, instead of just you know, instead of this covering it over, it'll actually pop down. Okay. It makes them float in essence. All right. All I need to do is basically we need to add this code here. And I will manually write out 1, and then I'm just going to copy and paste the rest because I don't think you really want to do all that. So we're going to do this. Oops, I put these in the wrong spot. My bad. Hang on a second. Delete, enter, Control V. There we go. And there we go. Okay. So I need to go ahead and add a style here. So now, if you remember before, we do style type equals, and then you do text/CSS. We don't actually have to do that now. In fact, it was like not working when I was doing that. So we're gonna do style, and that's it. Because there used to be a time when you would write script, and you have to write script and say type JavaScript. You don't have to do that either anymore. So, which is kind of nice. So we're just gonna write style. If you do style type, it actually I think won't work. I was having a problem where I'm like, I understand why it's not working, and it was because it was that. So just leave it as style. So we need to do, we need to make 12 classes. So .column will be our class, column -1. All right. So a 1 column, add the brackets, and then we need to do width. Okay. And then it's got to be 8.33%. Boop. And then float left. Float left. Okay. And then we would just do that for all of them. So then the next one would be here, so on and so forth. But again, because I like to cheat, I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to copy this. Control C. And I'll go like this. Control V. Good. All right. And we're just going to tab this guy in. Boop, boop, boop. And these are too far. So I'm going to go like this. And then if I hit Shift tab, that'll actually go back the other direction. Good. So now I have a column for each one. You can see each one is just 8.33 added on top of it all the way till we get to 100%, which is awesome. And good. So got our columns. Now what we need to do is add a row. So the rows just work. Basically, we just need them so that it will start on a new line. So every time it's a row, it's, you know, one will be a row, and then at the end of the row, when you start another row, it automatically starts another line. Otherwise, it'll just keep going to the right and go off into wherever. Okay. So row after, well, where are we? Okay. So, okay, so after this, we're just going to go ahead and do .row. We're going to make a row class, and then these two, and then after. So if you remember, this is a pseudo class, or a pseudo element. basically what that means is that what we're making now, this rule, will actually apply to after the row. I mean, you'll do the row and then whatever, and then after the row. So like if I want to add a picture to every time after a row class, I could put a picture in here. It's going to always add it, not add it to it, but after it. And that's the idea. So I don't want to add this to the row. I want to add it to just after the row, because I want to start a new line just after the row's done. So first thing I'm going to do is do content, and we're going to do this like that. Okay. And the idea here is just to make sure there's no content. So clear out that there's nothing there. Then what you're going to do is you're going to do clear. Okay, and we're going to do both. What that does is that's the same thing as telling it to start on a new line. If you clear, it'll say, okay, well this line is done, because you can clear floats. This is attached to the float. Okay. Then we're going to do a display, and if you remember, there's block level, inline block, so on and so forth. But what we're trying to do, because we're doing basically a grid style thing, we actually need to add a table. Okay. And that's good. And do I have an extra? I think I got like an extra piece here. I don't know. Maybe that was just pasted from before. Okay. So now we got that. And then the last thing I need to do is add this box sizing border box thing. Now the purpose for that is that it will, let me do, so we're going to do this to, if we do an asterisk, that means it applies to all elements. Wrong thing. And the reason why we need to do this is that box sizing, and we're going to do border box. Okay. The purpose of this is that, God bless it, I keep saying the reason. The reason for this is that if we have an element, like let's say it's just a certain size, let's say it's this, right? If I add a border to it, it's actually going to be larger than this, because this will be the width, and then the border goes on top. And so what will actually end up happening is it won't actually fit into a 12 grid system. They'll actually be larger. For both that and also padding. The padding also adds to. This will just make sure that regardless that they always fit into this box. It'll say, okay, cut inwards, not outwards. Okay. And we'll save that. Just so Control S. And now what we can do is actually add to our body something so we can actually see if it's working or not. And I'm just going to again copy this here just because it's a little bit easier. Boom, Control C. Actually, you know what? Let's do it by hand so you can see it. So we're going to do a div class, because we're going to start with a row. So it's going to be a row. Oops, row. It's going to automatically give me that, which is good. And then we're going to do another div class. And this time it's going to be a column. And I can do any size I want. Let's do a 2 and a 10. Right, so it's always got to add to, actually we'll do 4, I'll do the same as up there. It's always got to add to 12, right? So we'll do 4, not 40, class 4, okay? And then I would put something in here. In this case, I put a logo, so I'll put a picture in there. For now, I'm just going to do an H1, okay, and say, hi there, okay? Good. And then I need, so I have one column, I gotta do the other column. So sorry, div class row, or not row, sorry, column, and you can see it's already popping up. So if I have 4 there, I need 8 here. Okay, boom. And then we'll do a P for this. Let's say check out my cool responsive CSS junk. Okay, yay, and we'll put a period on it. All right, so we have to do a row. So you have a row, so it'll be like 1 across. Then it will do a column here and a column here. Okay, and inside of each of the columns, you say how long you want to be. It has to equal 12, and then we put in whatever elements we want to put in there. Okay, so I'll save that, and then let's see if we can open it up. I don't know exactly where I put it. Is this it here? Okay, that is not the one I was looking for. That was not the droid. Let's see, is this it? There we go. So if you look, you can see that this is basically going here, and then this one, you can't really tell. Let's do this real quick, just so we can see it. So I'm just going to do border. and then boom, and I always forget, I think it's size first, so I'll say 4 pixels, and then we'll say solid, and we'll say black. I think that's how it goes. Control S, Control R. Ah, crap, it's doing it on everything. Hang on a second. Okay, so I'm going to take this out. We're going to Control X that, and I'm going to show you a neat little trick that's helpful. So I want to add it to all the columns, this next little thing here. There we go. So the way to do that is you can add, let me see, I have it right here. I forget, where are you at? You can do this little bit of code here. So Control C. So Control V. Okay. So you add this little bit of code. And what it does is it says all classes, right? All classes that have this to start with, it will apply this bit here. So we'll do border. Okay, and then it was we'll say 2 pixels because that looked kind of thick. Nope, solid, and then black. This way we can actually see what we got going on. Control S and refresh. There you go. So now you can see that this one's taking up 4 and this one's taking up 8 in the grand scheme of things. Okay. So pretty awesome. All right. So okay. Good. And you know that's oops, that's not it. Where are you at? Here we go. That's great and everything. And if I were to shrink this, you'll see that it will. Oops. Yeah. It will scale accordingly, right? And it keeps it proportionate, which is awesome. So it's sort of like, it's almost more fluid than it is really responsive, right? Because it's not actually doing what I want it to do. I want it to like change, right? Depending on, and also stack. So that's not really possible with what we have so far. It will be possible eventually, but that is actually, that's only actually good to create something, you know, like this. Okay, so I'm gonna end this video and I'm gonna start another one, and well, I'll show you how to basically do the different sizes. Okay, and then yeah, we'll go from there.